Almost every nation on Earth currently has a falling birth rate, and most nations outside of Africa have a birth rate below replacement level. Women of fertile age in most nations on Earth are having, on average, less than 2 children in their lifetimes. This effect is going to have massive implications for future generations. But in this video, I want to broadly simplify the issue into 2 categories of effects. That is, the short-term effects and the long-term effects of this phenomenon. But to start off, I just want to talk a little bit about population in general, because it's something that I think is not well understood considering how important it is. The population of most countries and of the world has been growing, and it's been growing a lot in my lifetime, certainly. It's still growing, which at a glance might seem like a contradiction. If birth rates are low and falling, how can it be that the population is growing? It's because people are living much longer than they used to due to better availability of nutrition, better healthcare, better living conditions, more safe environments that we live in, mean that people live to old age and well into old age, rather than dying in infancy, dying in middle age, and dying in their 60s rather than their 80s. In addition to this, the populations of many European countries and the United States have been swelled by immigration, which also somewhat masks the effect of the falling birth rates in terms of just looking at population numbers. In this video, I'm mostly going to be speaking about my own country, England, if not otherwise stated. Many of these things also apply to other developed nations, but unless I say otherwise, I'm talking about Britain and England. The absolute number of people living in a country doesn't mean much on its own, but the distribution of the population massively affects how that country is going to live, what life is going to be like there. And the population distribution is often represented by a kind of inverted pyramid, where at the top of the pyramid you have the oldest people who are in the absolute oldest age bracket. You might start to see the sort of dying off effect of people reaching old age and dying of natural causes, but there is a huge population up there at the top of the pyramid of retired people, and getting younger and younger, the population sort of dwindles, causing this sort of tapering off. And although this is a simple scientific graphical representation of the population, there's also a sort of symbolic representation going on here of the older generations becoming a burden on the younger generations and the children now being born today, as if the older people are sort of weighing down and crushing the comparatively weak, small young generation. So talking in the relatively short term, what's going to be happening in the next 50 to 100 years, we're starting to see it now, but I believe it's going to get worse unless we can think of some new innovative ways to deal with this problem. We're going to start to fail to adequately take care of the retired population who can no longer care for themselves, because there won't be enough young working people to support a comfortable, adequate living environment. Some of the short-term measures that the government has taken already to try to address this problem are increasing the retirement age to incentivize people to work for longer and to delay that point at which they become more of a burden on the economy. They can continue to pay taxes, they continue to work and put into that the country's economy for just that little bit longer. The government has also been allowing the immigration of many working age people who can come to this country to study and to get jobs, to help to swell that working age population who are contributing to the economy and ostensibly paying taxes, although it's not clear whether they are a net benefit in terms of tax status. But starting to think about the long term again, those immigrants, if they continue to live in this country, they will themselves become older and no longer contribute, and they will need care as well if they live here into old age. Immigrants also tend to have more children than the native population, so that is helping to boost the birth numbers of our country a little bit. But again, looking at long term, it seems that immigrant populations start to assimilate some of the qualities of the native population, including birth rate. So even among immigrants, the birth rate is falling, and it's already below replacement as the native population is. So in the long term, what I worry about most, I think, if we don't screw things up too badly in the short term, thinking long term, I don't see why the birth rate will ever go up again, or why it will ever go above replacement level. We seem to be approaching the limit to how long we can make people live. So once that equilibrium is reached and the birth rate continues to fall, the population will just continue to fall. And even if it slows somewhat, if it never gets back above replacement rate, then the population will just dwindle to nothing eventually. At some point, for the human race to continue, replacement rate has to be above 2 children per woman. But when you look at across the worldwide, every country on earth, none of them have managed to maintain a high standard of living and a birth rate above 2. The only countries where there's a high birth rate are impoverished. And even in those countries, their birth rate is falling to the point where we may see them go below replacement level soon as well. I'm not dogmatic about the population number that we have now being the perfect number, or that we need more people on Earth. I don't know. It all depends, like I say, on the distribution. There's no number of people that would be like the optimum number. It all depends on the demographics, that is age, that is other qualities. If you told me that the population was going to be half what it is now, for example, in 200 years, that wouldn't tell me much about the quality of life of the people living at that time without knowing more. But if I found out that the human race was going to be extinct in a few centuries, that is something that I do find a little bit distressing. There's certainly plenty of people alive today who would be quite cheerful at the prospect of the human race going extinct or becoming massively depopulated, as long as it was peaceful and relatively painless, that is. But for me, that is a little bit of a sad thought, and I expect a lot of people watching this video agree with me. I wish it was as simple as just giving tax breaks or incentives to families who have more than 2 children, but it seems that they just, countries who have tried that haven't seen much of an improvement.
There's a principle in economics called opportunity cost, which means that even if something is low in cost, or regardless of the actual cost of something, there's an implicit cost to whatever you could be doing otherwise. The opportunity cost of having children is potentially quite huge. So if you are a woman with a fairly profitable career, then having children will obviously take time away from that activity. And the money that you're making elsewhere is, in almost all cases, going to be greatly diminished by having an infant, even if you can work through most of your pregnancy. Mary Harrington's latest book, I have still not finished reading, called Feminism Against Progress, explains quite well how absolutely necessary motherhood is to the economy without it being visible to the economy. The market forces that push and pull human activities aren't able to quantify the value of a mother having children and raising those children in a safe, loving environment. I don't think there's really any way around the fact that the more a woman is earning, the more she's participating in the economy before she has children, the higher that cost of having the children will be, even if she's not thinking of it in monetary terms. It's just unavoidable that salary that she knows she's making, that's going to be gone if she takes more than however many months of maternity leave out of work. So the effect of this is that the wealthier people get, the wealthier women get, it as their own economic agent, the less incentive there is to have children relative to their other activities. And now that we live in such an exciting modern economy where your money can buy you, trips to Fiji or expensive restaurants and delicious wine, yoga classes or skiing trips, or
right in the mouth.
Whatever decadent pleasures you can think of. The opportunity cost of spending that money elsewhere, or indeed losing that earning potential, is even higher. And the really sad thing about all of that is that women who are mothers already, which is to say mothers, they still value the children that they have. Once a woman becomes a mother, she understands that the value of that relationship with her child is so much more valuable than everything I just mentioned. More valuable than her career, more valuable than all the things that she can buy and spend that sort of salary on. That is something that people are sort of dimly aware of before they become parents, but it becomes absolutely apparent to people who are actually going through it, to the point that once women become mothers, they become interested in having, spending more time on that and having more children. That opportunity cost that I talked about, where when thinking about a woman who has a full-time job, who's thinking about becoming a mother, that's a huge opportunity cost. But a woman who is a full-time mother, adding another child to that family actually isn't a huge opportunity cost. It's just adding to her life. And of course that child will need some food and clothes. The cost of the second child, in terms of actual cost and in terms of opportunity cost, is much, much lower than the first child was. And this is borne out in the data that shows that once women start on that motherhood lifestyle, once they've had the first one, the rates of going on to having your second or third child are not falling. Once women become mothers, that behaviour is the same as it has been for decades. It's not exactly that women are having fewer children, it's that they're not even having the first one, or that they're having the first child later, so that they are not able to have more children beyond 2 or 3. But all of that is just to say that, based on the data that I've seen, I believe it would take nothing short of a complete economic collapse for women and for families to start having children at an earlier age and at a rate that would support a above replacement fertility level. And that may be soon, or it may be later. Even making the birth control pill illegal, I think, would not undo the damage that the birth control pill has done to our attitudes regarding sex and family and marriage, to the point that even if it were made illegal today, I think the behaviour would not change enough to reverse this trend. There are other ways of preventing pregnancy. We all know this. It wasn't the actual prevention of pregnancy that was the biggest effect of the pill, although that was obviously its primary effect. People knew how to not get pregnant before the pill, and they still know how to not get pregnant even when they're not on the pill. So even in an unrealistic thought experiment where we imagine a post-pill economy, I still think that this trend would persist, because something has happened to our understanding of marriage, women, men, family. There's a deep crisis going on, I believe, with people on an almost spiritual level, where they cannot muster enough faith in humanity and love of life and the world, or love of themselves, to want to reproduce until it's too late often. And I think it's perfectly possible that the human race may go all but extinct out of a mere inability to summon the will to continue. It's like we don't even believe in our own right to exist anymore. And at the moment that's manifesting in a sort of climate catastrophizing and people consciously limiting their reproduction to no children or one child, or two in some cases, out of a conscious desire to limit their impact on the environment. But I think that's just one manifestation of a deeper self-hatred that has grown in our society. I really didn't think that this video was going to take such a weird, dark turn, but that's where we ended up. So if you want to see some more optimistic, more light-hearted discussion, please check out Whamming Hour, Fridays at 8:30, and I hope to see you there. Until next time, goodbye and have a good day.